Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Other Side of Addiction. I am Al Richards, and again, we are missing our lovely co-host, Lori Warburton. She sent me a text earlier this afternoon, said she had an emergency come up. I hope everything is okay. She's supposed to give me a ring a little bit later to let me know, but hopefully everything's okay. So a huge thank you once again with an hour and a half notice. My buddy JD, thank you so much for such a short notice and taking time out of your day to come up here and co-host.
Oh, absolutely. Again, Al, I love being here. I love being able to help make a difference. And again, I'm just a phone call away. So.
Yeah, and you have been the last 2 weeks in a row. So thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Hey, we got another great show for you guys today. And before we get going, I just got to say thank you to so many people that are reaching out to me on social media. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps already, and I'm doing my best to hold back the tears because some of the messages that I'm getting from people, I mean, I'm just still shocked, I've had a lot more people even reaching out, telling me about addiction that's been in their family. And again, it's all types of addictions. I made a little bit of post to share a little bit more of my story about my wife's addiction this morning, and I had a bunch of people respond to it. So we just want to say thank you to everybody out there who's listening to our podcast and getting the message, and thank you so much for your support. So we are just truly, truly grateful and appreciate everybody out there.
And with that said, if I may, real quick, guys, again, if you find value in this, which I'm sure most of you do, please share it with a friend, share it with a family member. Again, we don't get paid on advertising or anything here with that. We're just here to help simply on that. So by on YouTube or the different places that we have this podcast, if you could just hit that like button, subscribe, and show your support, again, that's greatly appreciated.
Yep, thank you so much. All right, we're going to announce our special guest today, Jason. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I mean, you and I spoke, I don't know, it was probably maybe 3 or 4 months ago or whatever, and I was talking to you about our podcast, and you opened up and said, hey, I don't know if you knew, which I did not, and yeah, you just came out and started talking about it, and I asked him if he'd be willing to be on the show, and he didn't even hesitate. I mean, He said yes right away. So Jason was born here in Salt Lake. He's currently living with his wife and kids, and he began his struggle with pornography addiction at the age of 13 that continued for over 2 decades. He's currently been sober for 10 years. Incredible. That is awesome. Which was a difficult battle, I can imagine, because we had a guest on here a couple months ago where she shared her husband's sex addiction and the struggle that they went through to get to where they're at right now. And this is what's kind of weird, and it's not really weird because I'm sure it happens all the time, but you shared this with me when we first sat down and talked. So you got through your addiction, but then now you were supporting your wife through an addiction that she has. So, that's something else. So tell us a little bit more.
Trading places there,
Yeah.
No, and you're right. When you came down and chatted with me, like I said, about 3 or 4 months ago about this this idea and this podcast you were doing, and I was like, this is really, really near and dear to me, and what I've been through in my life, and seeing through my wife's life, and how it's affected us. And I think the biggest thing, and I know this is one of the driving forces for you coming out and doing this, is that everybody feels alone when you're dealing with addiction, right? Mm-hmm. You always feel like, I'm the only one going through this, I'm the only one that feels this way, and it's hard to find that support, outside. Even when you know there's people out there, you don't have that connection. And so, as you said, I got involved with pornography at a young age. I was about 13 years old, and it was something, growing up here in Utah in a religious home. It's something that you didn't talk about. you kind of hid it away and just hoped it would go away someday.
Yeah.
And but as we know with most addictions, the more you hide it, the more it's going to thrive. And so it was something that I would just continually beat myself up over, and just tell myself that someday it's going to get better, but that someday never came. And I carried on, went to school. I served an LDS mission, came home, got married, had kids. I thought I was doing everything that you're supposed to do in life to carry on and be fulfilled.
Yeah.
But in the background of all that was still this terrible addiction, and there was a time when we were first married. I was probably married for about a year or two, that I finally approached my wife and said, this is kind of something I've been struggling with for a long time. And, it devastated her to hear about that. But, I went and talked with our bishop, our congregation leader, and I talked about, ways I can get better and trying to work through this. And at that time, I was like, okay, this is good. I'm on the right path. I'm going to be fine. But little did I know, and how naive I was, that addiction doesn't like to let you go that easy. And so as I fall back into the same traps and same triggers come up, and my way of coping with life, it would manifest itself again. And the hardest thing that I was finding myself in is that I couldn't tell anybody else now at that point. I was like, I see how devastating it was to my wife that first time, and then it sneaks back up again. You're like, what am I going to do now? I just, once again, I found myself in that same cycle of, I'm just going to hide it, and hopefully it goes away, and someday maybe it'll get better. And so this kind of came to a head. We were into our marriage about 10 years, and we had 4 kids at the time, and I found myself on a business trip, and I was out of town, and at the time, I really hadn't done more than just viewing pornography and indulging in a lot of stuff there. But this time I was like, I'm actually going to go a little bit further. I'm going to go into a strip joint and kind of see that side of life a little bit more, and indulge in a little bit more. And so I did, and spent some time there, and then afterwards, I think something clicked in me that I said, well, I just stepped over another threshold indulging in this addiction, and at this point I'm like, well, how much farther is this going to go? Is it going to lead down to prostitutes? Is it going to lead down to affairs? Is it going to, where is this road going to end?
Yeah, no
Because
kidding.
it's not going the way I wanted it to. It's not disappearing like I thought it would. So I remember distinctly that evening going in and, going back to my hotel room, and on the way back there, seriously contemplating ending my life.
Wow.
Because I didn't think, at that point, I had reached this rock bottom state where I had no more faith in this getting better, and I felt like I couldn't tell anybody, because I felt like letting anybody know about this would just be so damaging and so devastating that I didn't want to hurt anybody that way. And so I remember specifically sitting over a bridge, over a freeway here in this city, and just thinking, I should just end it now. I should just get this over with, and that way no one will know. They won't be hurt. They may be sad, but they won't be hurt in the way that I think I'm going to hurt them. And I don't have to deal with this pain anymore. At that time, there was actually a guy that came up to me and was kind of hassling me a bit, and it kind of frightened me a bit, and so I just took off and I went back to the hotel room. And I remember specifically getting in there, and at that point just falling to my knees and just letting it all go, and just crying like I have never cried in my life. And I was begging for help. And I remember just reaching out to God and saying, there has to be some way. There has to be some way out of this. And it was probably one of the most powerful experiences I've had in my life. And it's interesting how you can be in a position where you feel so broken and so shameful, and yet you can feel so loved. And I literally felt the presence of God in my life, and I felt his angels there with me, helping me get through this just one more night. And I said, that's all I need to do, is just get through one more night. And so I got back from this trip, and I opened up. I said, I just need to talk to my wife about this, and I did. And as predicted, it was really hard, really, really hard. And looking back and seeing the pattern of addiction, and we always think that, no, I can't tell my loved ones about this because I'm just going to hurt them.
Yeah.
But what we don't really know is that we've already hurt them. We're just bringing to reality what's really going on. And it's kind of a facade when you think that by hiding something, you're not hurting somebody. But at the time, it was really tough. It was really hard. And the relationship that we had at that time is where she was like, I don't know what to do right now. I don't know where this is going to go. I don't know how am I going to deal with this right now. And so she needed a lot of space. And I was going back out of town for another trip, and here I am. I'm left with my wife, who's just crushed, and I'm opened up and I'm raw, trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And I remember I was talking to her on the phone one night, and she's like, I don't feel right with you being there alone and me being here. I think I need to come out and see you. And so she jumped on a plane and went out and saw me. And we spent the next 2 or 3 days not sleeping and just talking and talking and talking all night. And the interesting thing about that was, I think for the first time in my life, I had actually been completely 100% honest with somebody about who I am and what I've struggled with. And it was powerful. And as hard as it was on her, she still goes back and says it was the first time in her life that she saw who I really was. And she says, I've always felt like there was more to you that you just never opened up to me about. And now I kind of know what that is now. Now I know who you are. And we always refer back to that time as like, that was one of the most painful, but yes, most amazing and beautiful times we ever spent together. And it was needed. And the next few years, I met with a lot of counselors. I met with a lot of therapists, went to some groups. I went to some 12-step addiction recoveries for sex addictions, and it was a hard road. And obviously there was a lot of hiccups and relapses along the way.
That's part of the journey.
Oh yeah,
right. That's what I have found out. Yeah.
No, if you come in and open up about an addiction, no matter what it is, whether
Right.
it's drugs or alcohol or sex, you're going to find that your addiction is going to push back. It's not going to let you go that easy.
Yeah.
But it's finding that out. And what I found through this journey is that people would get so caught up with, I'd go to these 12-step groups, and people would say, well, I was 10 days sober, and then I messed up, and then I got to start the counter over again, and then I would always say, you know what? But you were 10 days sober. One day you weren't. You don't count it backwards. You just go, okay, now I was, sober 10 out of 11.
Yeah.
And I'm sober 12 out of 11, or sorry, 10 days out of 11, whatever it is. Like, so maybe for a whole month you were 30 days, and maybe you slipped up twice. Well, so that's like 28 days out of 30, and I think you've got to look at that and realize that you are going to have moments in which you fall, and you still will the rest of your life. And even if it's not with your addiction, maybe it's something else that you struggle with, you are going to be imperfect.
Yeah.
And I think if you're trying to put this facade in place where, I'm now this amazing person and nothing can touch me, that I've gone through this, then you haven't really learned what addiction's about.
And you stopped growing anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have to go through all that stuff to continue to grow.
Yeah. The one thing I've learned over the last 10 years is that an addiction is not something to be ashamed of.
Right.
It is something that is actually a very powerful tool that will help build us and strengthen us and grow, especially spiritually, in our lives.
Yeah.
And if you allow that addiction to put you in a place of shame, then you're never going to find who you truly are.
That shame's going to grow. It
Mhm.
will continue to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, here I was, coming out of this pornography addiction, and we really delved in. And my wife, the angel that she is, she, from day one, saw who I really was and didn't want to have me go through this alone. And she said it was going to be hard. And she kept on thinking back, but I could only imagine how hard that is to go through alone, and I didn't want you to do that. And so she would join support groups for spouses and do things there, and trying to figure out and delve into what it is, what is addiction and what causes this. And we'd have a lot of conversations about that and what lies underneath this and what triggers it. And so it was good that we could have a lot of deep and powerful conversations about, life and addictive patterns. And it was good because we were able to kind of set up a game plan for our kids as well. And understanding that, hey, we have 4 kids that are growing up in our home, and they're going to be faced with addictions in their life, right? Things that are going to tempt them and bring them over to maybe this dark side of addiction. We need to be very transparent with them. We need to be able to say, hey, this may be coming up. You may feel this way emotionally, and you want to find a relief, an escape from this feeling. These are ways you can do it a healthy way. And these are ways that are not going to be healthy. Because you are going to have those feelings. You can't escape. Everybody in life is going to feel moments where we want to escape.
Oh, yeah.
Where we want to get out of reality, where we are struggling. We just have to make sure in that moment, are we going to choose a healthy thing to get out of that moment, or are we going to fall back into something that's just going to create an addictive pattern? So,
and the healthy way, I think, and I'm not saying that I'm right on this, but from what I've seen and people that I've met and people that we've had on this show, seems like the healthy way is not the choice that most of us make. And I think it goes back because of the embarrassment or because of the fear or the judgment, when it's easier just to kind of go, okay, well, I'm just going to go this way and I'm just going to stay in my own little shell, that's just kind of how I look at it on things, that people don't want to go out and share their things because of how others are going to look at them, because society does look at all addictions. Mostly the drugs and alcohol and the pornography, gambling, they're like hit pretty hard. People judge them, consider like, what the heck is your problem, when they don't realize that problem is inside here. It's something that they really didn't choose. It's just that they got in so deep before they knew it. It just had a hold of them.
yeah.
Well, it's something too to relate to that, with what you were going through. Again, it's that same thing. Al's been through it, I've been through it on dealing with addiction, whether it was internally or on the outside. But it, like you said, it's that shelling up, being that clam, not opening up about it,
Mm-hmm.
and then those people around you judging for something that you may have gone through, because you don't want them to know because of that judgment. And it's a saying even in the industry work-wise, but misery loves company. So on that note of it, people can be so quick to judge because then they don't they might have something going on internally, and it's like
helps them feel better.
I got my cover up. You
Yeah,
know, like
exactly
they're,
right.
They're going through this. Like,
Yeah.
don't focus on me at all. Like, I found it. You know, it's over here. And so there's a
Yeah.
lot of people that are like that when they won't face. And it was like, again, Al with your wife and her addiction. You know, me and my wife or my family and their addiction. You know, the addiction that got created was we were addicted to their addiction because we wanted to solve the problem and didn't have the right tools to do so.
Yeah.
And man, I tip my hat to your wife. I mean, I really do. We had Janessa on the show here a while back, and her husband, you know, battled the sex addiction, and it went pretty far for him. And it started at a young age as well. And she had people, friends and family, oh, just leave him, you know. And I've had the same thing, just leave, you deserve better. And yeah, you're going, yeah, I do deserve better. But for your wife to sit down and listen to you and get to know really who you are, I mean, that's a heck of a woman there. I mean, she really is. That's amazing.
Yeah. No, she is my angel in my life, and that, to what you were saying, there's probably a large part of that where she was somewhat addicted to the addiction too, you know, and having that codependency where she wanted to fix me too.
Yeah.
And to her credit, I think she really could see who I was inside and my potential, and she just wanted that to come out, and she didn't want all the garbage and the baggage that comes along with this addiction. She wanted me to be free of that, which she had the best intentions in that. But I think there was a point, and she's talked to me about this a few times, where she used to always try to monitor me and try to control me in this addiction, right? Because you want so badly that, like, just stop it, you know, just stop it and put on the brakes. But there was a point where she said, you know, she realized she couldn't do that. She couldn't control me. She has to let me go on my journey, and it'll be what it is. And she has to focus on her. And she said, once I had that understanding and it came to me that I will let him do what he needs to do, and I will work on what I need to do, that she felt a greater peace. And I tell her too, when that transition happened, it actually allowed me to actually learn what it is I needed to do. Because when you have someone over your shoulder all the time trying to say, well, you can't do that, or you should do that, or that, you know, it just kind of adds to that shame and just piles on that shame of the addiction. But when you realize there's no one looking over my shoulder and this is up to me, then you start really thinking about your decisions. Like, well, why am I doing this? Or why am I acting out this way? Or should I be here, or should I avoid that situation, you know? Because no one's going to tell me to avoid it. I have to make that decision myself, you know? And so once you get in that position, I think, and you don't have someone hounding you, you really start to use your agency in a way that is going to be beneficial for that recovery. And it took a long time, you know, and I went through a number of different therapists. I'll tell you that that was something that was really hard to do, but very beneficial, is finding someone who works for you. And you know, and therapy is key. I will always preach that. If you're dealing with any type of addiction, find someone who deals with that addictive behavior and is a good fit for you. Because having that individual that you can open up freely to and say whatever you want and it's not going to affect them is priceless. Because you can't keep opening up to your friends and your spouse and stuff, because that's a lot. That's a lot of baggage.
Well, and we don't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the point that you said that your wife finally realized that she had to back off, because I tried the same things for 7 years. And I had someone ask me once when I was on a podcast, they're like, so how did it work out for you? And it's like, it didn't. But I still kept trying, because that's all we know.
Yeah.
You know, we're doing our best to, and my wife don't like the word fix, because she's like, I wasn't broken. So I didn't need fixed, you know, but she needed help. But us as spouses, doesn't matter which spouse it is, we're doing our best because we care for that person. We love them. Even if it's our kids, we want the best for them, and we do our best to say, okay, yeah, I can jump in and I'm going to be that helping hand. But it's different than helping our spouse wash the dishes or cook a meal, because we don't understand the deep feelings that's going inside that person that's battling that addiction. So when your wife figured it out, it's kind of like when I figured it out. I've shared this before, but real quick, when I let my wife come back home again, it was about 2 weeks, and she came up to me and she goes, you're different, you've changed. And I changed because I finally, like your wife did, decided to get on with my life. And I'm like, you're either jumping on this same train I'm on or you're not. But just like what you saw, as I started changing the ways I communicated with my wife and the way I started doing things and getting on with my life, it started changing her as well. So I'm glad that you brought that point up, because I really do feel like once you learn that communication skill and once you go, because us on the other side, again, there is not a doggone thing we can do. Yeah. There's nothing we can do except be there for support and still love. Like I told my wife, I will be there as long as you're sober. You're sober and you need my help, I will be there. But if you decide to go off and get all drunk again and get all nasty with me, I don't need that in my life anymore. Those are your battles to fight. But if you're sober, I'll be right there to help you any way that I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I can, again, not take much time, but talking about that, going back to your wife giving you full control, same thing, and I've had to go through that. I told you, I called the cops on my own wife, to the point like I was done handling it. But, you go through that moment for years where it's like, who are you talking to? What are you doing on your phone? What are you doing on the computer? Almost like as a parent, we keep these leashes on our kids because, there's that group like 0 to 5 where all we're trying to do is keep them alive, right?
Yeah.
But you got these leashes, but then all of a sudden it becomes like, hey, we're supposed to be husband and wife, and all of a sudden I've got this short leash, right? And it doesn't feel, at that point, it doesn't feel like it's a marriage or a relationship. It feels like one or the other's taking care of another child.
That's exactly, because I used to feel that same way. Yeah.
And so to have that, just to cut it off and be like, hey, look, this is what I'm doing. I love you, but you can either be a part of us and we're going to continue to grow forward, or, your decisions are going to have consequences and I'm not going to pay for them anymore. That's a harsh way to put it, I guess, but
it's true, though. It's true.
Because it brings down that addiction you had for, trying to fix your wife, same thing with me, and vice versa on both sides again. I think it is one of those things where somebody's like, hey, like this is real. Like it brings that reality moment onto both sides. Mm-hmm. But
and like Jason said, it doesn't feel like somebody's looking over your shoulder, right? Because JD brought it up in one of the shows when he was actually being interviewed. I was addicted to my wife's addiction, and your wife was addicted to your addiction, to where you're constantly monitoring it. Once that's away, I mean, you even said it yourself, you kind of felt that attachment, right? Mm-hmm. That freedom to kind of go on where you felt like you needed to go without the person who really didn't understand but still wanted to be there for you, looking over your shoulder or tapping you on the head.
Well, and being in that spot, it's like a kid again, the saying, give an inch, they take a mile, like how far can they get away with it? But like when you're being monitored and then all of a sudden, like you're always over your kids, you're protecting your kids, with their friends and hanging out. It's kind of the same thing on the addiction. It's like, if it pushed, and start me if I'm wrong, but like maybe you went out on another business trip after, and like the fact of not being looked over, and like, oh, I could do this and she wouldn't, not like those things could pop back up, and obviously that self-control. But it's sometimes one of those things when you're in that moment of being monitored, it's like, I've got this little window, I'm going to take full advantage of it. Yeah. Instead of being like you said, you got to a point where you're making that choice, like, should I be here or should I be here?
My wife used to say, well, he's accusing me of drinking, so might as well drink. And that's how she looked at it.
Yeah. Yeah. She thinks I'm doing this, I might as well be doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, and I think also it makes you realize, why am I trying to avoid this, right? Am I doing this? Am I trying to avoid my addiction because I don't want to get caught? Or am I avoiding the addiction because I actually want to get better?
Right.
And so when there's always someone looking over your shoulder, it's always this, I just don't want to get caught. And that actually feeds back into my prior addictive mind, is that I grew up my whole life not wanting to get caught. And so that's all you think about is, I just don't want to get caught. I don't want to get caught.
Yeah.
But then when you take that away, and then you realize that, okay, why am I really doing this? And you start to think it through, because the addictive brain is all about, that split second, like, I need a fix now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I need that fix. And it's really hard to look long term. And so when you're in that moment, when you say, I just need to get that fix, it's hard to say, well, okay, so I do get that fix. Then what? Where's that going to go to? And then what's that going to go to? And then if you can start thinking the scenario down the road, and you realize, like, well, that's where I'm going to get, then you can come back a ways and say, well, then I'm not going to start that path. But if all you're thinking about is, I just don't want to get caught, and it kind of puts you in that moment instead of thinking of the long-term consequences, you're not going to get over that addiction. It really is trying to remap your brain to think of long-term consequences.
That's exactly right. It's those new habits or new way of thinking, and it's beating that thought that keeps tapping you on the head, going, oh no, because you've got to do this because it's going to make you feel a lot better. Somebody said one time that it was all about choice, and I said, well, maybe it is about choice, but in a way maybe it's not, because for me, who has drank in that, I could say, man, I had a rough day at work. I'm going to go home. I'm going to have a cocktail. I'm going to chill. I'm going to relax. But by the time I get home, I'm like, yeah, I'm not interested. I think I'm just going to have a nice dinner, have some water or punch or whatever, and kick back and relax. Well, someone who's battling addiction, it's not that simple, because that thought gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger till really you do give in, and go, okay, well, this is going to... Because my wife used to say she knew that if she went and got that bottle and she drank, she knew she was only going to feel good for a little while. And then when she woke up the next morning, then she beat herself up and felt guilty because she had that drink.
Yeah. Then
she would start that cycle all over again. Mm-hmm. So that's where it gets you caught, right? In that little whirlwind.
Yeah, and it's so easy to do that. And I think that when we have that thought that keeps on pushing on our brain, that I've got to do this, I got to fix that. And that's kind of where I was saying that I would encourage people to follow through with that thought, not the action, but the thought. Because I think when you're trying to overcome an addiction, the first thing you want to do is like, oh, I'm tempted or triggered by that. I got to get that out of my mind. And you can't. There's this kind of like this OCD type of thing in your brain that's just like, it's going to keep on repeating. But I don't know if it's going to work for a lot of people, but something that really helped me in understanding is that I'll let that thought take me on a journey, and I say, okay, so what if I do this? What if I go to this site and indulgence in pornography, or go visit this? Then what? Okay, well, maybe I'll get this fix or enjoyment out of it, and then what? And then how am I going to feel afterwards? And then who am I have to talk to about this and feel like and then who am I going to disappoint? And then I start thinking and then I start to associate that feeling of wanting to act out with the disappointment and discouragement of the pain afterwards. Instead of associating it with the fix and the enjoyment, I start to associate it with the disappointment and the shame. And so then I'm like, all right, I'm not going to go there. But if I was to just sit there and just push out of my mind, like, nope, I don't want to do that, I never follow that thought through to the consequence. And so it's really easy in that moment of weakness, like, okay, I'm just going to do it, because I'm not really thinking about the end and where it goes to. And then it's not, it's not a foolproof thing. And then I understand that it's a complicated thing. And in the neuroscience behind addiction really fascinates me. The neuroplasticity of how our neurons fire and how we desire certain things, and the habits that we pick up through addiction. Our mind is a complicated piece of work,
Yes.
And so you're right when you say that it's a choice. Well, yeah, it's a choice to a certain point. Mm-hmm. But depending on how we've wired our brain, and some of it's even genetic, we have a lot of science behind that, there's tendencies for addiction that are genetically passed down as well, depending on how our brains are set up. But it's hard. Not to say that it can't be changed, but one person's choice at the beginning of their addiction recovery versus their choices closer to the end are vastly different, the types of choices you can make. And I think what we need to do is think about what choices are available to you, because you may not have all the choices in the world to start off. You may have small choices, and learning how you can make those and where they come from, I think, is very helpful.
See, and I think that's what hurts our society, because there are people out there who want help. I mean, I know there is, some that are homeless and addicted to drugs or pornography or gambling, and they want that help. But there's some people, not all of us are lucky enough to have those resources. I mean, there's thousands, millions of people out there that they don't have those resources and they want to get help, but they just don't have that means, or their family has just shut them completely out and they don't have anybody to go to. And that's one of the things I'm hoping where this will go, where we can build this up enough to where we can come up with some resources that if somebody does want help, we can say, hey, okay, we have the means of being able to help you. I mean, but it's still that journey. Our producer, Brad, the owner of Resilience Talk Network, he's worked with children before who's battled with things. And he said every time someone came to me and said, oh, they messed up, he's like, instead of getting on them and getting upset, which I used to do with my wife, it'd be like, okay, so what did you learn from it?
Yeah.
And I'm like, gosh, why didn't I know that kind of wording before?
Yeah.
Because I might have been able to help my wife a lot sooner by doing those type of things. But instead, it was angry because we didn't know how to deal with it. But that's what he would say. So what did you learn from it? And then if they did it again, he'd say, okay, what did you learn this time? And you brought it up earlier in your conversation about getting help and then falling back and then getting help and falling back. It's part of that road. And you said maybe this time I went 10 days.
Yeah.
Okay. This time I went 15 days. I remember once where, I don't know how long we had been going, but my wife is like, she got to this point where she'd say, hey, I'm 1 month. Hey, I'm 2 months. Hey, I'm 3 months. And it got to where I finally told her, I'm like, don't even tell me anymore because I don't even care.
Yeah.
Because I've heard it all before. And then pretty soon she'd relapse.
Yeah.
And then she'd come back, hey, I went 1 month again. I'm like, what did I tell you? Don't say anything to me because I really don't give a crap. I did, but that's how angry I was. And then I met a friend at a networking group who showed me his 5-year chip, and I was checking it out and I was telling him congratulations, and I told him my wife went 13 months once and I bought her a real nice 1-year chip, and she ended up falling back after 13 months, and I took the chip away and I literally thought that guy was going to punch me right between the eyes. He got this look on his face and I'm going, uh-oh, I just said something wrong. And he goes, you don't ever do that. He says, doesn't matter even if she went 2 days or whatever it was, you celebrate that. She deserved that.
Yeah.
And that helped me. That opened and it's taken me over 7 years to figure this out. But it took somebody else that I'm talking to about addiction, like we're talking to you, where JD and I, we learn as well because we're going, oh my gosh, yes, why didn't I do this? Oh, I can see how that would make a difference.
Yeah, and I that's the whole point of this journey, right? Is that the clock doesn't start over if you mess up, right? It's not like you erase everything you've experienced just because you fail again, right?
Right.
And I like how you put it. It's like, what did you learn? Because that really is, every time we mess up, it's about what do we learn, and I've tried to preach that at my workplace and in the home and the family, is that we do make mistakes, and the mistake is worthless if you don't ask yourself what you learned from the mistake.
Yeah.
So let's make these mistakes count. Let's use them for something, and it's interesting. Kind of going in, the second half of my journey is with my wife now. My wife has a severe eating disorder, and she struggles with anorexia, and it really became prevalent as I was becoming clean and working through my addiction. stuff started to come up in her life. And
Wow.
a lot of it was probably triggered through helping me through my addiction. There have been countless studies of the effects of sex addiction on spouses, and how it really does mess with your body image and self your self control, or your the way you view yourself in a way,
Like self-esteem?
yeah, self-esteem. Sorry,
Self-esteem,
yeah,
yeah.
and I think that I could see that, and that was hard on me, because then now I'm starting my second part of my recovery is learning how to accept myself. So I'm getting to this point where, okay, I'm not really messing up. I'm kind of becoming sober longer. I'm getting through this part. Then there's this raw part of me that I'm like, but do I really love who I am? And then you realize that I've spent the last 2 decades trying to hide who I am and being ashamed of who I am. And now I'm starting this new chapter, and like, well, who am I? I got to figure out who I am, and do I really love who I am?
Yeah.
And so that was really hard, and especially seeing my wife starting to go through this transition of struggling with this battle, and then starting to blame myself for it. So now I switched from the addictee to the codependent, and so now I'm starting to see how I'm seeing her struggle, and I'm blaming myself for all these things. And I blame myself for, well, if I wouldn't have done this, then she would be okay. But as I worked with her and her therapist and seeing her struggles, a lot of this stuff was underlying things that just coming up from her childhood and past.
Yeah.
Maybe my things was just kind of a catalyst or a trigger that kind of just helped it come to the surface. But there was stuff lying underneath there, dormant for years anyways.
That needed to come to surface.
Yeah.
So we're gonna stop for a quick break, but when we come back, let's follow through with this, because it's like the tables have turned now.
Yeah.
Right now, you're the one that has to be there for the support and understanding, and so I just couldn't imagine that, how just things have flip-flopped. So
Yeah.
Okay, so hang on to those thoughts.
All right.
Guys, stay tuned for the second half. This is going to get interesting. I mean, it's already been really interesting. So, stay tuned. We'll be right back, guys. Thank you.
How do you start your morning? Start it with a cup of High Point coffee. Because no matter where you go or what you do, it's always better with coffee. High Point coffee. What's your high point? Located on the corner of 7800 South and Redwood Road in West Jordan. And a special thanks goes out to our partners in Oxford, Mississippi.
This is Gregory, owner of Lift Up Concrete, proudly serving the Wasatch Front for the last 12 years, lifting sunken flatwork for both residential and commercial applications. Only fully trained professionals lifting concrete at your residence with the same quality of material and method used at every commercial job we ever do. Don't replace it, lift it. liftupconcrete.net, 801-792-4535. Contact us at liftupconcrete.net, or if you're looking for a complimentary quote, 801-792-4535. Again, 801-792-4535. Again, this is Gregory, Lift Up Concrete Lifting.
Hello, my friends. This is Brad Neufeld, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Resilience Talk Network. you can listen to my show, Resilience, every morning, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. On my show, we will be discussing what it takes for you to overcome the day-to-day challenges that all of us face in life, as well as some of the devastating ones that may lead us to feelings of hopelessness and despair. It's my goal to provide you with the tools and skills that you need to overcome anything that is thrown your way. To find out more about my show, visit our website at www.resiliencetalk.com. That's www.resiliencetalk.com. And as always, until we meet again, go for everything that you want in life and make it happen.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the other side of addiction. Here with myself, Al Richards, my buddy JD, and our special guest, Jason. Thank you guys for being here. So before we get started on the second half, I want to thank a few of our sponsors. I want to thank High Point Coffee in West Jordan off the corner of 7800 South and Redwood Road. These guys are awesome. Steve and all his employees are just phenomenal. I also want to say thank you to my buddy Gregory Carlisle, the owner of Lift Up Concrete out of Kaysville. If Lori was here, she'd say, give your concrete a facelift, and that's exactly what these guys do. They're phenomenal. As far as I'm concerned, they're the best concrete lifting company in the valley, and I deal with a lot in the concrete business, so these guys are awesome. I also like to take this time to thank a couple of our new sponsors. We've got Troy Huddle with I Am Power Ninja Real Estate. Troy, thank you so much for your sponsorship. Matter of fact, your sponsorship is going to help us with our little filming that we're going to be doing here pretty soon, which is really cool. And also to my friend TJ McLeland. He is with Fitness Real Estate. He's helped us out. So, guys, thank you so much for your support. We couldn't do this show without you guys. This is helping us take this to a different level. So thank you so much. We are blessed and we are very grateful to have you guys. So right at the end of the show here, well, not at the end of the show, but right before we took our break, Jason was talking about how his wife now, as he's kind of been battling his demons with his addiction, has gotten himself to a really good point in life, and then how he was kind of feeling guilty that his wife kind of started battling with some addiction. So let's just take off from there.
Yeah, it's interesting, as I was saying before, that I was getting to this point where I was, that the addiction itself, was feeling like it was more manageable. I was getting to a place where I was feeling better about myself and what was going on. But and my wife, she comes to me, and this is probably about 7 years ago, and she's like, I have an eating disorder, and she really kind of found out. I mean, she'd probably been struggling with it most of her life. It really wasn't as severe as it's become, but she was meeting with a therapist and trying to figure out, some of the battles and demons she has, especially with mental health, with anxiety and depression and stuff she's had. And it was kind of pointed out to her that, you might have an eating disorder. And she's like, nah, I'm fine. I don't do the stuff that other people do. And then as time carried on, she started seeing signs of her eating habits and what she was doing with food, and she eventually got in with an assessment with an inpatient health facility, and they said, oh yeah, you check all the boxes and we need to get you in. And it kind of like she went down with a friend to go to the assessment. I really didn't know much about it until she came back and said, hey, this is what's going on. They want me to go in. I'm going to be heading down there next week. I'm like, oh, okay. And so she heads down and she goes to this inpatient facility, and trying to get the help she needs, and then she starts doing some outpatient work as well, and trying to get on track. And we're like, okay, that's good. I'm glad you've got that. And then, sure enough, 6 months later, she's like, I think I need to go back again. I'm like, okay, all right, well, we'll get you in there. We'll support you. And this whole time, I'm thinking, man, just like we were saying before, don't you have a choice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
it's interesting when you have an addiction and you feel so out of control, but then you see someone else with a different addiction, and you're like, well, that's not a problem, right?
Yeah.
Good
point.
And it takes a while for you to think, like, well, just because it's not the same addiction doesn't mean it doesn't have the same patterns.
Yeah.
And to me, seeing her go through this and kind of go through these ups and downs and this repetitive emotion, all of a sudden things started to click, and I was like, oh, okay, I see where this is going. This is a lot similar to what I was going through. And I immediately started doing the things that she would do to me that weren't good. I would try to control her, and I'd say, no, you have to do this. And I'd be like the food police, and I'd do all these things like, no. And we'd have fights, and we'd argue about things. It was just going this terrible place. And I felt completely out of control, and you'd think that going through it from having an addiction, that you'd be able to relate. But I'll tell you, it is a totally different feeling being on the outside of someone and seeing someone you love with an addiction and feeling completely helpless in a different way. And because you want so much to save them. You want so much just to step in and just say, just do this, just eat what you're supposed to eat. Just, follow this plan, take these medications, whatever it may be, to help you be better. And you want to make them who you see as the person you love, right? You want to see them be that person that you see is being held back by their addiction.
Yeah.
And it was really hard. And so she's still is struggling with that. And we have times where she'll do very good, and times where she's not doing very good. And it's frustrating for me. It's frustrating for our kids, and it's frustrating for her. And I remember, her going back in to this facility, and she'll be gone, depending 4 to 8 weeks, sometimes at a time. And here I am at home with 4 kids, just being kind of a single dad, trying to run everything.
Yeah.
And I just remember so many times just being so angry. And just really angry at just the situation, angry that here I am having to take care of all these things, and I didn't ask for this. And it's funny how there's so many times I had to stop myself. I'm like, man, my wife didn't ask for this either. We neither one of us asked for this.
Yeah.
She didn't ask to have a husband who had a sex addiction to help him through that. And she didn't ask to have an eating disorder. And it's so hard because we want to. There's something in our human nature that wants to just say they could fix it if they wanted to, and blame them as an addict, and saying that if they really loved me, then they'd do something different.
Oh yeah,
right?
I've used that line quite a few times.
Yeah, you do so
in
much.
all honesty, yep.
And when she was first going through this, I would say, yeah, but if you just think about me, just think about the kids, before you do this, and you can get through it. If you really love us, you'll do that. And gosh, and you think I would know better, and that's the interesting thing, is that having gone through that, you think you'd know better. Because at the end of the day, when I was sitting in my addiction and I was going through things, it didn't matter how much I loved my kids or my family. I was going to act out and do things that weren't right.
Mm-hmm.
But because I did love them, I was trying to get help. I was trying to do certain things, but it didn't always work out perfectly. It was hard to quantify, loving someone and caring for someone and the choices you make in addiction and how they're related. But the real key thing is not the people you love outside your life, but the person you love inside. And that is really the core to any type of addiction, is learning to love yourself. Because, when you're addicted to something, you're abusing yourself. And you don't care. You don't really care, because you don't want to see yourself, or you don't see yourself as any person of value. That when you act out in a certain way and make these choices to get your fix, you're just thinking, I need something to make me feel better right now, because long term, I don't really like who I am. And so I need something to numb that out.
Yeah.
And so trying to understand that, and that now my wife was going through this and thinking about, I can't withhold my love from her as punishment for her not being clean, or dealing with this addiction in an appropriate way. And I remember, just like I talked about with my addiction, when I just fell to my knees that one night and I just gushed with tears trying to pour out my heart. I remember a few different times doing that same thing when my wife was in a treatment center, and just feeling so overwhelmed, and the weight on my shoulders of like, I don't know how I can do this, and just falling down and just crying and just getting that out of my system. And there was one particular time I was just crying and I was praying and saying, what can I do? What can I do for this? Because I'm at a loss. And I particularly remember a voice coming to me and saying, just love her. Just love her. That's all I expect you to do, and that's all you can do, is love her. And now, how does that look? That was something I had to figure out. How do you love somebody who continually is hurting themselves and doing things that hurt you and hurt your family around you? That's very difficult. But I think we were talking a little bit about this at the break, that when you're in a relationship and you're trying to say that this should be a 50-50 relationship, and I give you this much love, you should give me this much love back, I put this much work in, you put this much work back, that's unrealistic.
Yes.
And that's not going to happen, right? You've already destined that relationship to fail. But you come to realize that what I have control over is that I can give this much love. And there may not be a number attached to it, or how much percentage that is. But I'm just going to focus on that. And I'm not going to focus on what I get in return. I'm just going to focus on loving you. And when you can truly let go of, I expect something in return, it changes a lot. Now, I don't think that should be confused with boundaries, because there definitely are certain boundaries you need in relationships, right?
Yes.
And you got to make sure that you're safe and that certain things are being respected. And so there should be always serious conversations about that, of what you can and can't do. But when it comes to love, I don't think there is a limit to that, how much you can love someone.
It's that, for us to have that unconditional love, that's hard for us as humans. Mm-hmm. We see it in our pets. I mean, if you have a dog as a pet, you can scold that dog and it'll put its tail between its legs and its ears down, and it'll go in a corner and crawl, and lay down. And you can walk out the door and then come back in 5 minutes later and that dog's happy to see you. For us as humans, why is that so hard? I mean, I was at a class last year, and the gentleman that was teaching the class said that divorce rate has gone up. It's skyrocketed, and of course, 2020 didn't help a lot of that stuff, but he said that people will get divorced because of 20% of things that their spouse does wrong. 20%. 80%'s wonderful.
Yeah.
But 20%, so they will get a divorce to get in another relationship to find that 20% that they were missing before, just to find another 20% that doesn't fit, and they'll get divorced again. To where, like you said, you have to have your boundaries, because my wife and I, we have our boundaries, But to be able to let that person still be that person a healthy person, because you don't want to see them go through addiction and things like that, because that's definitely not healthy. But that's a really good point that you brought up with that, because I mean, none of us are perfect. We all do stuff. I mean, my wife does stuff that just irritates the living crap out of me, but that's who she is as a person. It's not my job to try to change her to do things the way that I want to see things done, because that's just not who she is. You know, my cleaning is different than her cleaning.
Yeah.
And for a long time, she's like, I ain't doing it anymore because you just turn around and go right back behind me and do it. But we've now come to this understanding. It's not that she's done anything wrong. It's just I look at it differently, you know. So, but having that love for that person, yeah, I think you can, there's never enough. I think, like you said, there's no number on it. You can give 100% and you can give 100% more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's we have a dog too, you know, and it's interesting you brought up the thing about the pets, because like I'll step on my dog's foot and then the dog will come to comfort me and make sure I'm okay, even though I'm the one that hurt the dog.
Yeah.
It is interesting, and you know, how do we bottle something like that, this unconditional love for someone without attaching it? And I really think that as I've come to discover myself and kind of figure out how I tick and how my brain works and emotions, that a lot of it comes down to what I'd mentioned before is, do I love myself? And sometimes when we don't love ourselves and we don't really have that sense of confidence and self-esteem, we're constantly looking for validation from other people, right? And so I found that, well, if my wife isn't doing this for me, then I don't feel any worth. Or if my kids aren't, you know, responding back to me with a certain type of love, then I don't feel any worth. But when I can start to change that, and it's a difficult path and a difficult road, but it's something that I feel is priceless, is finding that self-love, and that I am important, and who I am is priceless, and it doesn't matter what happens around me. You know, my entire family could leave me. You know, I could get fired from my job. All this stuff could happen to me, but it does never change how much I'm worth and how much I love myself. And I think when you can navigate life with that behind you, then you can love more freely, because you're not waiting for something to come back to give you that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's 100% on cue, I think. What do you think, JD? I mean, you definitely have to have that self-love to give out the love that others deserve, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it goes into just even in the life development side of things, or your mindset, and I'm going to just tie that in with this, is again, like it says, that you have to love yourself. You have to love who you are, and if you don't, obviously you got to look internally what it is that needs to be changed, because if you can't love yourself, it doesn't give you the right to love anybody else, you know? And it's the same thing. That's another addiction. Is like, oh, well, I don't like who I am. I don't love who I am. I don't like the way I look. I don't like what I'm doing. But if I give this person love, that's okay. Like, it's the same thing. It's another addiction. You're just covering it up, you know, and you're not taking care of number one. If you don't take care of number one, how are you going to take care of anybody else?
You know, and there's a great exercise out there that I was taught to actually really see how much you do love yourself. Because if you just ask somebody, I mean, if somebody came up to me 2-3 years ago and said, do you love yourself? I'm like, damn right. Yeah, hell yeah, I love myself. You know, what's wrong with me? That's how I actually even looked at it. But then when I was given this exercise with these affirmations, to go home and look at myself in the mirror, straight in the eyes, and say these affirmations, it took me 3 or 4 times to do it before I realized, man, maybe I don't, because every time I go to say it, I look away, and then I look back to start another one, then I look away. It's like, maybe I'm not looking at myself the way that I really think I'm looking at myself. And I think all of us on a daily basis can get deep inside to start looking at who we really are, because I have a family member that this person thinks every way that they think everybody else should be thinking that way as well, and if they don't, then
Shame on them.
Shame on them, you know, and it's not, because all of us are different, but we really, really have to love ourselves deep inside, because if we are, then we can help other people, I think, in a different way, you know.
And it comes to talking about those affirmations and stuff and bringing it to all different levels, or, you know, mind, body, and soul, I guess is the best way to put it, on connecting your whole being. But, you know, talk those affirmations, you know, we have affirmations of, you got to put that belief, and I truly go to quantum physics in this, like you're talking about neurons recreating those pathways, those habits, recreating them, because it is, you know, you got a habit of this addiction, you got to change that. And those affirmations and stuff, you know, when you look in the mirror, you're like, hey, you know, it's like, hey, I am a good person, I am worth this, you know, and you're reading those and you look away. And then also too, like, if you look at yourself and you're like, hey, I have this addiction, you still look away, like, it's like you're ignoring truth, you know, you're ignoring things
because you don't want to believe it,
right?
Yeah.
And when you go through those, you know, to face those challenges head on, like, you have to be real with yourself, you got to go, you know. And I've been that way, I mean, getting into it, you know, not to go deep, but I mean, financially, I've had my moments, you know, like even going through things right now, but it's like, you got to be real with yourself, like, where you know, I go through habits where, like, when things are bad in my life, I'm like, or like moments when I get money, and this is an addiction I fight to be smart, you know, but it's like I have it, it's like, hey, well, I probably should go buy something nice with it, because it might not come again, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When in reality, the smart thing is like, no, hey, be smart with it, and it's put me in bad spots, you know, things that I'm paying for and doing now, and having to, you know, at my age, figuring it out, when if I would have figured it out 15 years ago. But it goes back to the things I went through with my family, Al, that I talked to you about, things I've gone through with my family. It's like, you know, that makes me feel good when I can go do that stuff, or when I can go give money to others and help them out, because it's almost like I don't feel like I'm worth it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so again, that affirmation, you know, looking yourself in the mirror and facing that person, sometimes it's the hardest and scariest thing you have to do.
And I think all of us do it. I mean, if there's someone out there that's listening to this saying, no, you don't do it, no, you better start searching and really looking at things, because I guarantee all of us do it. And we're going to continue to do it throughout our life, but we can change, you know, different things. I mean, you can, like the habit part. I mean, I get up, I have a routine every morning that I do, you know. It's like, even if I get up late or get up earlier, that habit is still there. I mean, we were out camping last weekend, and I didn't have that routine because we're around people, but when I was out standing in the lake, swimming around, I was doing my own little habits, trying to keep things on that, because I know if I let it go for more than a few days, pretty soon that habit starts going away.
Well, no, those old habits that we have, you know, like, again, Jason, your addiction, you know, how, I mean, being real, those habits, because they're instilled with us at a younger time in our lives, it takes a lot of mental power, honestly, to stay away from it and to keep that control. Like, hey, I'm in control, I don't need that in my life. But if you subconsciously just released, and like you said, those few days you let those habits go, how easy it is to fall the other direction, right back into the old habits, because you have to create those new pathways, those new neurons, you know what, like I was talking, you understand that stuff very well. But those old pathways, it's like, you may have put some cones on that off-ramp, right? But you have the vehicle that can just go right over those cones.
You can go right over it.
And so you gotta keep that at the forefront of your mind, you know? And again, it's tapping into yourself, and we'll use those lies, I guess, or those misguidance, again, like me going out and spending money, or going to pornography or drugs, or, you know, eating disorder, alcohol, all of it. It's like, there's a deeper problem, you know, and it goes back to when it started, and you're filling that gap.
Yeah.
Like, that's how you fill that gap, you know, when it's not doing good for any of us, you know, but that's how we handled it, because it's that reality of, do we want to look at ourselves?
Yeah,
that's it. I think it comes back. So during our break, we were talking about the higher power, basically, or God, however you guys want to look at it. You know, we all have our own way, but you know, for myself, it's God. And I think when we start falling out of that, that's when a lot of times I hear that voice that says, hey, you know, snap of a finger, because that voice comes in going, hey, you haven't done this yet. You know, I mean, even times on mornings if I happen just not to get up and I sleep later or whatever, and I'm jumping up and I'm running around and doing things, and it's like I'll be driving down the road and that voice will come in and say, hey, you didn't say your prayers, or you didn't talk to God today, or you didn't do this, or you didn't do that. And it's like, oh my gosh. So I make sure that, I mean, there's times I've missed hitting my knees in the morning, but I'm not ashamed to say I'll be driving down the road going, God, thank you for this day. You know, I appreciate that I'm awake today, and, you know, thank you for the favors and the blessings, and to keep that pattern going.
No, and,
you know?
And relating to that again, it's like, I was just thinking about this again, the challenge again, and it's comical because it makes me mad every time it happens. But it's like in life, you know, you're driving in your vehicle and I'm using that, getting off that off ramp. It's still there, even if you got it blocked off with some cones. You can still plow through it, and then all of a sudden you're on a bad way. You know, how many times have you guys drive? And I'm going to use Utah because we've got the worst roads, right? I'm just going to use that right there. But you know, you're driving down the road and you're on a smooth road, and you listen to your music, life's good, whatever it may be, and all of a sudden you hit the biggest pothole, and you're like, what was that?
Yeah.
That's life, you know, that's what happens. It throws those at you, and it can bring that addiction, you know, that it could be that pothole that ruined the day, when realistically you can be on that smooth road and keep going, but you are going to hit those bumps, you are going to hit those potholes, and it's like you said, you know, don't count it like 10 days and then you reset, you just hit a pothole.
Yeah, that's it. Just keep going. And I'm sure, and you have shared this throughout this whole podcast, but you realized you can't do this alone, right? And now that your wife's going through this, I'm sure she understands that as well, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I think that's, I mean, she's got a great team together, and doing well with you know, therapists and dietitians and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, she realizes that her relationship with God is something really important to her too. And and I'm grateful that she has that understanding. But she needs my support too. And what that looks like, may be different from the support that I wanted, because she's a different individual going through a different experience.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to listen to what she really needs, and then be able to decide what I can do, is important. Because I'm not a good listener. I'll just throw that out right now, and then my wife will probably agree with that wholeheartedly. But
Let's give her a call.
Yeah, I that's one of my greatest weaknesses, is just sitting and listening, you know. And I think that there's something in the genes of most males, where we just want to plow through and fix things, and not really sit and listen and just hear things out. And this whole process, whether it be through my addiction or working with my wife's addiction, I have been able to find time to be present and to be mindful. It's something that I've been working a lot, especially with my therapist most lately, is what does that look like to you to be mindful and to be present? Because that is kind of the opposite of what an addiction is trying to do to you, is trying to take you out of the present.
Yeah.
And taking you away from that. So in order to really combat an addiction head on, it's learning that ability and that talent to just be, and to sit and to be still and to listen to how does my body feel? What am I hearing? What am I listening? What are my surroundings like? And I'm a person that's always been go, and I struggle with that. But I will tell you that is one of the sweetest things I have come to appreciate, is learning how to sit with myself and to meditate, or whatever that may be. It look differently to different people in different ways, but that presence of just being still is so powerful.
Yeah, well, I agree.
And I like on what you're saying there, again, teaching yourself, you know, that you weren't listening to her. Like, you know, listening's not as men, as you mentioned, you know, like we see, okay, this is the problem, and we very quickly in our heads can come up with the solution.
Yeah.
But we don't think about everything in between.
Is it the right solution?
You know? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But we see this, like, oh, this will fix it, you know? And so, and I'm just going to relate, but, you know, there's times and stuff because my wife made me so mad with the alcohol, and then I mean, days might go by and then we're having a conversation about something else, and I'm still so mad about that. I don't hear nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
you know, she's talking to me about what I want for dinner, and I'm like, I want you to sober up. Like, it's, you know, it's like, no, what I really want is spaghetti, but like, you know what I mean? Like, all the thoughts that are going through your head, and then, like you said, you live such a fast-paced life, like, not just what's going on with your wife, but, you know, the kids, what's going on with work, what's going on here. So all these things are just, your mind's processing 80 million thoughts in a day, and when you got to take that importance, that time to slow it down, like, hey, babe, what can I do? You know, or let me listen. Like,
With you saying that, so have you found that while your wife's having a conversation with you, sharing something with you, have you gotten to that point to where you know there's times that there's nothing that you can say or do that would help her? Or do you also at times struggle with being the therapist? And the reason why I say that is because my wife, and I've said this before on the show, I went and picked her up one day from the Epic, and we're coming home, and she's telling me something that happened, and of course I start mouthing off, and she actually told me to be quiet, and she goes, for once I wish you would be my husband instead of my therapist. You know, and did it still click? No, I was still trying to be your therapist, you know, but I've learned as time has gone. So when she was first starting to get clean, I remember one day she called me up and she was very upset, felt like she had no meaning in life. She had just finally got a job that she hasn't worked, in over 4 years because of the addiction. But she was just really letting all her emotions out on me. Now, the old me, I would have started being her therapist again, you know. But after it was done, I'm like, babe, I hope this helped you by being able to get this out. But is there somebody you can call that will understand more what you're going through? Because I don't. And I don't want to say the wrong thing to make you feel worse or say something that's going to get you upset. And it took till the next day that she come up to me and she goes, you have no idea how much I appreciated that you just let me talk. Like you said, just sit and just let her go out. And there was a few times when she was talking that I was taking it personal. Like, I'm the one that's causing this, kind of like what you were feeling with your wife when you found out. So have you gotten to that point to where now you know that there's certain things you just sit there and listen and not say?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because there have been a few different times where I have allowed myself just to sit with her, and whether I just sit and listen, or if I just sit and hold her, or whatever that may be or look like, and she's come back to me that same thing. She's like, that's probably the best thing you've ever done for me. Do I learn from that? Not always. You know,
because we're guys.
Just like you're saying, you know, there'll be times where I
have a
feel
hard
like
time.
I have my agenda, and I want to push through and make sure my agenda is heard. And yeah, I mean, I don't see that any different, and that's in my mind, relapsing in an addiction or relapsing as being a support person. Because I feel like as a support person, that truly is like the height of perfection. You can just be there, have your boundaries, just listen and love them. Like that's ideal, right? Mm-hmm. But I will relapse, and I will try to take control, and I will try to put my influence into that person. And that's what I would say is it's a relapse, a support person. Just like as someone with addiction, you relapse and you fall into that addictive behavior again. So it's okay, though, you know. And what I need to step away from is say, well, what did I learn from that? I better not do that again. I shouldn't say this. I shouldn't say it that way. Yeah. If I'm upset, and this is another thing that I have had conversations with my wife about. Am I emotionally available right now to listen to you? Because it may be that she wants to talk about something that's really deep, but I am not emotionally available for that deep conversation right now. And just to be honest, I'm something like, hey, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, or whatever I'm feeling at that time. I'd love to listen to you, but I don't know if right now is the best time. Let's shelve this right now. Do you want to talk to somebody else, or come back to me when I feel like I'm more available to talk about that? Because if you talk to me right now, you may not get back what you want. And I need to have that same conversation. She's had that same conversation with me, you know, like where I want to open up and talk about stuff, and she's like, I just can't talk about that right now. You know, I'm not available for that. And that's understanding, like we talked about boundaries, right? Certain boundaries in a relationship that, hey, that's okay. It doesn't mean that I don't care about you. It doesn't mean I don't love you. It means that I'm just trying to be present about how I really am right now, and am I going to be able to do that for you? And so, yeah.
And relating to
That's a
that,
good
you know,
point.
and I'm sure Al and yourself can, again, you've had to teach yourself. What did you learn, you know? But it makes me think of just the moments with my wife, or even when my parents are going through the drugs, or my sister with her problem, you know, my other sister with alcohol. Like, you see this problem, or there's a problem going on, or they want to talk to you, and then you're like, all right, yeah, let's do this, you know? And then you're like, or there's an issue, and no, they don't want to address it. So in your mind, you're like, I'm going to address it, and we're going to solve it. You're not going to run from me, you know? Like, that's how, like, when somebody's talking crap on you, you're like, you know, hey, this person said this person said this, and it goes down this line. You're like, okay, well, I'm going back to Johnny number 1, and we're going to go handle this.
Yeah, we're going to take care of it.
We're going to handle it right now and get this all straightened out. And it's the same thing with your spouse or the addiction, you know, with your significant other. You're like, we're going to hit this head on. Instead, you've learned that you're not, because your emotions are right there at that point, probably angry. It's not the best emotion to be handling it with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the best thing is to step away. Hey, even if it's 15 minutes or it's a day or a couple of days, whatever it may be, you know, whatever the time. But, hey, we need to step away from this so we can handle this properly. And, yes, I want to listen to you. I want you to listen to me. We're here to help each other and support each other. But in that moment, yeah, I've had my fuse is short. Like, legit, my fuse, even to today. I've learned how to control it from getting ignited as quick. But, like, when it's ignited, it's like, hey, like,
It's too late.
yeah,
Can't blow it out.
Yeah, you don't have the time, you know. It's like a grenade. You pulled the pin and dropped it, you know, like
Yeah.
in a mud puddle is what you're doing. Like, that's what it's like, you know. And so, like, understanding that, like, it takes a lot to get that person there, you know. But, like, when that fuse is lit for you or you know, it's like, wrong button, you know. Or, like, you know, again, same thing. That button that you had going through the pornography addiction to your wife with her addiction now, same thing, Al, you know.
Yeah.
It's like in your head, you're like, man, we always tell everybody, don't push the red button. Like, why do you enjoy hitting it?
It's because we're curious, I guess.
You know?
Yeah, you see that on Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner all the time, right? How many times have you seen the coyote press the button or stand on the X? You think he'd get it, but we still don't get it.
Yeah, no, we're like,
Yeah.
okay, you got it.
Stand here, okay.
No. Yeah, and I think a lot of that goes back to that feeling of control, right? We want to have control of the situation, so we push what we want to say instead of sitting back and allowing it to take place. And that's such a difficult thing in human nature, to try and let go of control and let certain things take place. And it's interesting how I've been able to see there's a correlation to being addicted to something and being a support person. Because you kind of talked about before, you're addicted to their addiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's still kind of a form of an addiction. And you can start to see those same patterns and how to, I was in that addiction because I wanted to control things, and I wanted to get that way to escape from reality because there's no way I could control it. And now you're saying, well, now instead of controlling that, I'm trying to control a person. And so, but there's very similar things involved there.
Yes.
And being able to let go and trust in the process, and trust that it's so hard. And there've been many times where my wife will come to talk to me about something, and I want so much to say something, and I'll hold back, and I'll just say, okay, I'm just going to do this. And I trust the process. And almost every time when I'm able to do that, I'm so impressed, because our relationship is enriched. She feels enriched. I feel enriched. And the thing that baffles you is like, why don't I just keep doing that? Why is it so hard? And then you go back to like, well, yeah, it's just like an addiction. You'll have moments where you'll have sobriety, and you do that, and you're like, I feel so good that I was sober for 30 days. Wow, this is the greatest high I've ever felt. But then you go back, and you're like, well, why did I do that again? If that felt so good, why did I go back and do the wrong thing again? And so there is such correlation between those two things.
Yeah.
Well, and the
it's that
relationship
habit.
going through with that, like you said, you know, like it feels so good, and then, you know, the relationship with you and your wife, that stronger connection that you feel between you two, is great. And then you're like, the same thing, that button she pushed, if I would have just disabled it in the first place, it would have been a better turnout. And it's just sometimes, like you said, the things that we can control.
Yeah.
So
This is some good stuff, guys. We're going to take another quick, real short break, and we will be right back with you.
Hi, this is Tamara K. Anderson, and I want to share something special with you. When our son Nathan was diagnosed with autism, I felt like the life we had expected for him was ripped away, and with it, my own heart shattered as well. It's very common for families to feel anger, pain, confusion, and anxiety when a child is diagnosed. This is where my book, Normal for Me, comes into play. It shares my story of learning to replace my pain with acceptance, peace, joy, and hope. Normal for Me has helped change many lives, and I'd like to give this book to as many families as possible. We've put together something I think is really special. My friends and listeners can order copies of my book at a significantly discounted price, and we will send them to families who have just had a child diagnosed with autism or another special needs diagnosis. We will put your name inside the cover so they will know someone out there loves them and wants to help. I will also sign each copy. You can order as little as one or as many as hundreds to be shared with others. So go to my website, TamaraKAnderson.com, and visit the store section for more information and to place your order. You can bless the lives of many families by sending them hope, love, and peace. Check it out today at TamaraKAnderson.com and help me spread hope to the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the other side of addiction. Hey, before we get started here to end the show, we just want to say thank you to Brad Newfield, Resilience Talk Network, for his kindness and his heart for opening up his studio to allow us to do this amazing podcast and bring in these wonderful guests that we've had. I mean, gosh, I think we just had our 15 episode go out, and I am just shocked with the response that we're getting from people and our guests. I mean, we've not had one bad guest yet in my eyes, and I've shared this before. Every time the evening, my wife's like, "How was your podcast?" It's like, "Oh my gosh, this one was so good," and she's like, "You say that about everyone. It's because everyone is so good." We have some great stuff. So Jason, again, thank you for being here. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you for sharing, because one of the reasons for having this podcast is to let people know that this is a place that they can come, they can share. JD touched on it at the start. We're not here to judge. We're not here to point fingers. We're not here to make anybody feel any way except loved, basically. But it takes a lot for someone to come out and talking about addiction. It doesn't matter what kind of addiction it is. It takes a lot of guts for people to come out and share their personal stories, their struggles that they've gone through. But what I hope people are finding out about this show is that by the end of it, they're realizing even all these dark places these people have gone through, all of us have gone through, as Lori has said many times, there's that light at the end of the tunnel, because life is better, right?
Yes. No, I would never trade anything to go back to where I used to be. Never in the world. And I think when you are in the mix of an addiction, and you have hopes that you can get past it and it will be better someday, but I don't think you can ever truly realize how much better life is, because you're able to be free of an addiction. And I think the reason why you can't really fathom it is because I always thought that just being free of the addiction would be the joyful part of it. But that's just the minor part of it. The real part that I think really has enriched my life is getting to know me.
Yeah.
And getting to know who I am and learning to love who I am. And that's the enriching part. You see, I think that we get caught up with how big an addiction is and this big monster in our life. And we realize that the addiction itself is just a counterpoint to it. really underneath all of it is an emotion or a feeling within ourselves that we don't matter and that we are worthless. And once you start to understand that I can get rid of this and I can build this sense of worthiness within myself, that is where you become enraged. It's not the absence of the addiction, it's the addition of
The
love.
addition and the stuff that you've learned in that process, right?
Yeah.
I mean, really, when you're battling the addiction, I'm sure it feels like a huge boulder. And then you finally drop that boulder, but by the time you drop it, you realize it's actually a pebble because everything on the outside was really the big part that has come into you, right?
Yeah, and I think I can't stress that enough, especially in this platform, is that people who are out there right now who are struggling with an addiction or struggling with supporting a loved one in addiction, you don't have to wait for that addiction to be gone to start loving yourself.
Good point, yeah.
You don't have to wait for that to all of a sudden say, okay, now my addiction's gone, now I can have a better life. You can have a better life today, but it's learning to really love yourself and go on that journey and start that journey, because that is really what we're here for. Learning how to love others around us and to love ourselves. And so, yeah, you will have moments where you mess up and you fall back. But I think if you always associate the addiction or the addictive patterns with how good your life is, then you're missing the point. Because really how good your life is understanding you are loved and that you can love other people.
Yeah, that's a true point. I had somebody tell me once that I don't have anything at my age, and this was 5-6 years ago when this happened, but it's like you're 50-something years old, you don't have this, you don't have that, you don't have this, and it's like, you know what, maybe not, but I have a lot more than you, and it's because I do have a loving family, and I do have amazing friends, and I do have a great relationship that I feel, which I still work on making it better with my higher power or God. And to me, and I like this saying that life isn't happening to you, life is happening for you.
Yeah.
And if we all look at that, because life isn't going to be all flipping pansies and roses every single day. It's just not going to happen. I mean, I've had some stuff happen here just in the last week, and it's really, really been bugging me. It's eating me up. I'll wake up at night, and all of a sudden I'll start thinking about it and having a hard time going to sleep. And here it is, my wife, who's battled the addiction, she's the one that's putting her arm around me going, what have you told me many times? It's out of your control. Just say, God, this is in your hands. However it's supposed to turn out, the way it's supposed to turn out, just let it go. And I heard it again today, which was so weird because I was really struggling this morning. My release is to get up in the morning and go hit the gym, and that's where I get a lot of my frustration out. And I had to go help my brother with a concrete pour today. So even though it was good exercise and hard work, but it wasn't like the same. So I was kind of struggling. But I don't know how many people out there know Joel Osteen, but he's like this preacher guy, but he has a lot of good stuff that he has, and his topic was exactly that today. And I was listening to it on the way to the job site, and then another series of his came when I was leaving to go home and shower to come here, and it was like it was meant for me to hear today. It's like it's out of your control. Just live life, let it go, but keep that love who you can, love everybody, and life seems to be able to have a way of being much better when you're not trying to pick up and carry those rocks by yourself all the time.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah, just drop them and let it be the way it be. So
going back to that, just relating, again, and that's not just with addictions, but that's with life problems.
Yeah.
Right now, things that we could all be facing, I mean, I'm just going to relate to the world right now. A lot of people are facing, like, eviction, that stuff's coming up,
Yeah.
It seems like it's such a huge problem right now when it's like, just put your nose down to the grindstone again, put your faith in that everything's going to work out, everything happens the way that it's supposed to, but, like, things will turn out. You obviously have to take action, right? You have to follow with an action, but in life, like we look at those things and these challenges that we all go through right now, and things come up like you said this last week, you know, and over your life, you know, you've had those moments where it's like, I don't know how I'm going to get over this mountain. Like, I really don't. Like, I'm ready to call it quits because this is pretty much like cliffhanger. I'm hanging on this cliff going this direction, you know, trying to work my way to the top, and it just seems like no point. And then also, too, that boulder, when you feel like you can't get out of the boulder, so you start chipping away. And even though you might feel like you're making a little bit of progress, but then you step back, and at that moment, you still see this huge, giant boulder, and you're like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm never going to get through this. But then you do get through it, and you go further in life. You look back, and it was just a pebble. It was just a hill.
Yeah.
We just seem to add on to that boulder. We seem to add more on.
When we don't need to. It's a mental add-on.
It is. That's exactly what it is.
And that book that I've talked to you about, but you've read it, but Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins.
Yeah, Hawkins.
Highly recommended. But it teaches you how to, the emotions you're going through, there was something that actually internally caused that, and like fear or addiction, what you're feeling, but it teaches you how to be able to let go of that stuff to be able to move forward as well.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it if you've ever.
It's a good book.
Yeah, it's a really
good book. Yeah.
Good. So.
Well, guys, thank you. What a phenomenal show. As I say with every show, they're all phenomenal, but maybe I'm biased, but I think it is. But Jason, again, thank you so much for being here, sharing your story. Greatly appreciate it. Very blessed to have you here today. JD, thank you for stepping in again for Lori. Lori, we miss you, but JD, thank you in such a short notice. That's
no problem.
Yeah, a short notice. So thank you.
Car felt like a helicopter on the way. Just kidding.
It probably was. I seen the blades. Yeah, when I got here this afternoon. But hey, guys, thank you again for tuning in, and thank you for your support. We've still got some really great guests coming up. We've got a few guests that we're going to be interviewing here in the next month or so from the UK, which I'm really excited to do that. But if you guys got any questions or anything that you would like to share with us, you can find me on Facebook, Mr. Al Richards, or you can go at Mr. Al Richards. That's actually my Instagram as well as my Facebook page. My Al Richards Facebook page seems to be the most popular one that people are going for. You can also find Lori Warburton on Facebook if you got anything for her. And JD, share yours.
Yeah,
I mean, you've been here for a while.
Letters J and D and then green out, so GreenHalgh. Again, we're just happy to help. We're glad to connect with people. Again, no judgment. And as far as things go, again, on this podcast, again, if the messages that you guys are seeing here and that you're getting from this, and you can see that it could help somebody else in their life or your own life, please, again, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share. So, again, we appreciate all of you and everything that you guys are doing, and we're just here. We want to make a difference, and we hope that we're able to help out and touch the hearts of many people.
Great point. Yep, so thank you. And guys, if please check out Resilience Talk Network too at www.resiliencetalknetwork.com. They've got a lot of other good shows on there, so please check them out. So we'll end with this, as we do with every show. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing. Recovery is giving up one thing for everything.